Many of us find ourselves overwhelmed with one of life's hardest transitions, walking our parents through their final season of life. This topic is tender for me because I lost both of my parents this year, and so I feel deep compassion for many of my friends who are walking through this as well.
Yes, how do we make this season meaningful and rich despite the overwhelming challenges that are a part of the process? How do we best support our parents while attempting to manage our own fear, our own grief, exhaustion, and emotions? Please join us as we explore ways to navigate this season of caring for aging parents and loved ones with intention, with compassion, and connection.
Do you sometimes feel lost in your relationships, your identity, or even your spirituality? Welcome to Gilmore and Green, where healing and hope meet.
We are marriage and family therapists and relationship experts who care deeply about helping you grow, strengthen your relationships, and deepen your sense of meaning and spirituality.
We long to share from our clinical experience, years of training and solid research, including ideas about how to strengthen the things that matter the most to all of us in life.
We're so glad you're here. Our hope is to share simple, meaningful ideas that support you in your healing and in your growth. Welcome to Gilmore and Green, where healing and hope meet.
Hi, I'm Cheryl and Green.
And I'm Dr. Debbie Gilmore.
If your parents are aging, you're probably already feeling a shift with more doctor's visits, harder conversation. And Debbie, I think it's kind of a quiet fear of what might be ahead. 1 in 4 Americans are caring for adult family members. That's a lot of Americans that are doing this. And 24 million are caring for an aging parent. This is actually an increase from the 18 million that were being cared for a decade ago. And actually sometimes why we are called, our generation, the sandwich generation, because we're caring for our parents and we're still caring for our children.
Let's just talk about that term, sandwich generation. When I first heard that in college, I was like, what are you talking about? Well, envision the sandwich. And really, you feel squeezed too, even though your intentions are so good. So I'm glad you brought that up, the sandwich generation, caring for aging, caring for children.
Yeah, and the squeeze of that, right? That's the point. So in our podcast today, we hope to talk about how we can support our parents and ourselves through this challenging and actually really sacred season. This is a topic that's so tender to my heart because I recently lost both of my parents just within the last year. And I can still feel the overwhelming emotions that came during this life-changing shift in our family. They're still very close to my heart. So this is an important podcast for me.
I watched you grieve, and it was very interesting to me. I was taking copious notes because you were so graceful in your grieving and you used that time so brilliantly. That's why I think you are the most qualified to talk about this topic that we're covering today. There were moments that were beautiful and moments that were anguishing. I have always said that my dad was my hero. Of course, my parents are both gone. But I considered him my mentor, my hero, the person that I wanted to be so much alike. And though he's gone, I still consider him a giant of an example. I refer to him often, someone who believed in me and was always there for me. My mother was the greatest influence for me in the growth as a musician. She was a musician herself, and it was her love of music that influenced my passion for musical performance. However, most importantly, she taught me that music is one of the most powerful ways to promote the spirit. I learned that from her, and I depended on both of them, actually, as I struggled and worked to become a responsible adult. At every age, we need to know someone is there for us. For many of us, we count on this being our parents. And of course, as we get older and our parents leave, it transitions. They're no longer an option. What happens when people who cared for us now need our care as they become like children? That's what it is, really. It can be such a hard moment when we realize our parents won't always be with us. They're actually aging to the point of death, which is a reality of life. Often we feel unprepared or even afraid of what's ahead.
Yeah, Debbie, first of all, you have talked about your dad especially, and I love hearing about him and I'm guessing so much in you from him that I can't wait to I hope to meet him someday, and your mom. But we want to talk about this in phases today because there are phases to this process. The first phase is one that comes on us and it can be kind of surprising. We start to notice our parents maybe have more doctor's visits, maybe some little memory slips. There's some physical signs of them slowing down. There can be even an increased dependence or even fear and anxiety in them. I think this is hard because these are the people who have always been strong for us and there for us and unflappable in some ways.
And Sherilyn, we've even start to say, I don't recognize them. In our memory, we have this one image and now they're changing and we have to alter all of that.
Yeah, and there's emotions to it. I really strong emotions.
Yeah.
Quiet emotions, I think, because at this point you're kind of observing, right? Quietly. And there can be things like denial in this, minimization, anxiety, role confusion starts to happen. And then this subtle grief as you start to observe just changes in your parents, quiet changes. So in this phase, kind of the beginning phase of the process, we would suggest that some of the goals would be to just start noticing and preparing, not start panicking, but to just start observing and noticing things and beginning some preparations. It's a time to begin gentle conversations with the word gentle as a key word, asking your parents about their wishes or their preferences when it's timely and appropriate. Again, in calm, gentle ways, observing their changing needs without rushing to control, right? These are some of the ways that we can navigate this first phase. I think the greatest suggestion in this phase, though, or the best suggestion for this phase, is to start beginning, though, important preparations. I think what I learned with my parents is that there becomes long times when they're no longer capable of doing things that you wish could be done. And so to begin early, the preparations, I think, is so wise. And my parents were actually stellar at it. At this point, they started getting rid of things in their home. They actually had their funerals planned. They bought their headstones that sat in their garage, which was weird to all of us. And their burial plots were purchased. They did that because my little sister passed away and they wanted the same tombstone as she had, and they were going out of business. So anyway, but it was just comforting to all of us to see all these preparations that they were making, even 20 years before they passed away. They had so much in place. How it made me feel is it helped me feel like we would be more prepared when the time came to do hard things. So I just appreciate the preparations they made in that phase when they still had so much of their capabilities and intent in place.
Yes. And as I observed your process, Sherilyn, I noticed that your siblings were all on board and they were all eager to be a part of this process. That's the ideal. And we don't always see that in this phase. Those that are the caregiver rise up, and those that are not feeling capable or maybe even not willing will also rise up. It becomes apparent. The burden will be on one more than the others. I want to acknowledge that's what I worry about actually, is having these conversations early helps all parties prepare for what is this going to look like. And even in families where there's a discrepancy of willingness or unwillingness, you can structure it so that everyone commits to a certain amount of caregiving so that you can disperse the burden. And, even though it's a willing burden, we're willing to take that on. But those that may feel less capable are given assignments and roles that they can fulfill. So I really admire your family, Sherilyn, for doing it so beautifully. We talked about phase one. Phase two can be difficult and can end up requiring the hardest emotional shift. This is where we start to focus on what's this like internally. This is when your parents now need you in even greater ways. And it forces a major role shift in your life. They may need help getting to doctor's visits and help with financial decisions or technology. I need help with technology. It's not just them. Transportation. Now, often they lose the ability to drive. Okay, so now you have to be the Uber driver, and they require more assistance in their daily needs. You will likely experience a roller coaster of emotions, which of course are normal. This is expected. It's a part of the process. Some of the complex emotions that come with this phase, if you think about it, can be guilt. I would say misapplied guilt, guilt of just overall guilt and not even being able to put your finger on what exactly you feel guilty for. Resentment is a very normal part of this process. Fear of the unknown, exhaustion because the hours, extended hours of care, and even sibling or parental conflict, which I just mentioned, is often a part of this. So, one of the biggest concerns is how can this best be handled? What can you do if your relationship with your aging parents or siblings isn't healthy and instead is tumultuous? Many family members are carrying deep wounds and histories of hurt, unresolved hurt, neglect, and conflict. So, I want to share some things that you might consider in this phase of new demands and role shifts. First, while it may be hard, try to accept the relationship as it is or is becoming. This really means adjusting expectations and not expecting that the relationship will be the way you wish it was. Think about what level of involvement is healthy and more realistic for you. When you give this thought and you have a clear idea of how much involvement you can offer, the level of concerns lessens almost immediately. It's so important to hold yourself to this structure and not betray yourself, these boundaries and expectations for yourself that you've put in place. Stay with that and honor that, because as you thought about it, you realized this is the healthy way for me. When the relationship shifts to more tension, and it's not likely the parent can or wants to repair, relationship ruptures can occur. You can choose what person you want to be. You can be in control. You can choose how you will respond rather than irrationally reacting. There's a difference between responding to something difficult and reacting to something difficult. Now, while your dream of these years might have been totally different, try to release the fantasy of a perfect ending. We don't always get to choose how it's going to look and feel. And then finally, seek support. It's okay to say, I need help, both from friends, from other loved ones, and even professionals who can guide you in the process, experts who know how to help. I was introduced to a concept of death doula just recently, someone who is expert in helping the family transition through the dying process. And it's a brilliant thing, but I never even knew that existed.
Wow, I didn't know that either. I've heard, of course, of birth doulas, but
Yeah.
a death doula, that resonates with me so much. That's really cool. Debbie, I'm really glad you've talked about things we can do when it's not ideal. These are such great suggestions when it isn't perfect, and it rarely is.
Yeah.
And so it's so talk about the less than ideal and how do we respond to that, especially in such a tender, one of the most important seasons of life as we help our parents do this. I appreciate you so much noticing how my family did it and how I did it with my siblings. And as I've come through this, I've really understood what a blessing it is to have supportive siblings through this process. And, I've thought about why that went so well for us. And maybe a few thoughts on that is one, we had a really strong relationship coming into this. It's something that we built together for, our whole lives. And I'm so grateful for it. I was just lucky, I guess, that happened. It doesn't happen for everyone. And I see that.
Let me
Are you
mention
gonna say
something.
Yes.
Yes, yes. As you have talked about your parents, I think it's not luck, Sherilyn. They cultivated a culture in your family, and you and your siblings worked together to maintain that kind of relationship. That is rare, but when you see it, you can certainly take principles out of that when you observe it and try to incorporate those things. So no, it wasn't luck. You had remarkable parents who really valued those relationships, and all of us wish that we could have had that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really saw the strength we had coming into it because of that. We were already ahead of the game. One thing that we did well, I think, is we had a lot of great communication. We had really important family meetings with our parents, and then at times without our parents, with their knowledge, but there were just times when they really couldn't cope with the decisions that needed to be made. They trusted us implicitly. We were transparent with them that we were meeting in their behalf. So we had, several types of meetings, but there was so much transparency in all we did. My sister, who's brilliant at details. She took over their finances at some point and has continued to do that after their passing. And we regularly weekly get the most beautiful, detailed, transparent reports of what she's doing and checking with us. And she's just been so great about that. And it's just made us feel united and like we're all on board and we all understand what's happening. It was the same thing with our parents' belongings. There was such transparency when all of that was figured out. We honestly just wanted someone to have the things that mattered in our family. We didn't care if it was us, if it was someone else. We were just happy that was in someone's home to love. So that part went so well and so smoothly. That can be a nightmare for families, arguing over things, but it was beautifully initiated in our family. We're also able to give each other a lot of emotional support. We were sad and grieving, sorry, I'm going to get emotional here. There was a day where I was with my parents and it was sad and hard. I could call one of my siblings and say, this is hard. I was the one that was in town, so I saw mostly the day-to-day things. And it was such a blessing to be able to call them and have their support when there were hard moments with my parents. My
Wow.
siblings did a great job of taking turns of caring. I have siblings in Arizona and Idaho. I have a sibling in London. And they stepped up and they came when I was drowning with the care. They came and took turns staying sometimes for weeks at a time. So everybody picked up, they lifted where they stood.
And
Everybody picked up.
the thing that I
Yeah.
love that you allowed yourself to share that emotion, because what happened, you might have been bonded before this experience, but during this experience and all the working together and supporting each other creates an even deeper bond in siblings. So what's happening actually is the gift of being able to be even closer. And, as you think about knowing that you could reach to your siblings when you were feeling that pain, sometimes when siblings are resistant, what we find in our work is that it's because they don't really know what to do or how to feel. Those of us who understand communication and emotion and pain can help them understand some ways that they can be a part of this and in their own way with their own personalities. But obviously you and your siblings had grieved together before, so you had already, the path was paved. But just hearing you talk about how supportive each other they were for each other, and now the resulting closeness that you have is so beautiful.
It really has bonded us in deeper ways. So thank you.
Mm.
Yeah. And even my brother in London, it was amazing. Even though he was so far away, he would respond to emails and phone calls with such thoughtfulness and tension. He would take his time. He would share his wisdom. He would offer support. I was actually stunned by the way he lifted us from London. It was incredible. And so it's beautiful when everybody steps in. Another thing we did is we expressed gratitude to each other a lot. We really were grateful for each other's efforts, and we were intentional about expressing how thankful we were for everybody's part. So I guess what I'm saying is, in my experience, if we can build a support network early, get organized and set up systems and resources that may make this time easier, siblings are a wonderful part of those resources, because the goal is that you want to spend as much time with your parents as possible, right? And that's something I learned too, is it's just so easy to get caught up in the details of the care and miss the moments with them. So it's so good to get organized and resources in place. And then being able to respect autonomy in your parents while increasing their safety. That's tricky, right? There's so much involved with that. I just want to mention, in this phase, my parents were in and out of rehab centers a lot. And that's hard because when one went in, then I usually had to go stay with the other one because they couldn't be home alone. It was really difficult when they'd go in and out of rehabs. And my dad especially got really depressed and discouraged in one of them. And so we did things like setting up calendars with little, even almost hourly things for him to look forward to, a grandchild calling, picking him up to go get an ice cream cone, watching a movie with him, just things to make that time in there easier. We worked hard to get the others, my mom, if it was my dad in the rehab, up spending time and vice versa. It's important to think about how can we make these times when they're in difficult places and spaces easier for them. And we learned too that rehab centers are overworked, that the care isn't always as good as it should be. And so my sisters were both nurses. They were incredible advocates for my parents' health and safety there. We were able to take some of the load off their staff by showering our parents ourselves and taking them walks and doing things like that. So there's just so much in this space that you can do to set up systems and be organized and find resources and work with each other to make it the best possible.
And you know, the other thing that we haven't talked about explicitly yet is that you can be the squeaky wheel for the parent that's in the assisted living, because they might not necessarily complain or even feel heard or be heard. They're one of many. And so if you can be that person that's the voice for them, calling out for their help, that's a huge part of this. Yeah.
Yeah, my dad got so discouraged in one. I was in there trying to help him emotionally, but what was really happening is he wasn't being physically cared for. And my nurse sisters, they came and saw that so quickly. I missed it. I didn't even see, what was happening. And their eyes were so valuable in seeing what the root of the problem was. And once we got some of those things resolved, then the depression went way away,
Oh, and you were able to witness that and feel, yeah, that you were helpful in that. You know,
Advocate.
this phase is really difficult, isn't it? It's just progressively difficult, can be. But many people avoid these conversations, avoid looking at this when you understand that your parents are aging. And so if you avoid it, it hits you, you're blindsided. So that's why understanding each of these phases is so important ahead of time. Or if you're in the midst of it, it's not too late. So this phase can result in families or children feeling overwhelmed, exhausted. We talked about that earlier. For example, here's an example. When a fragile parent falls, what this can set in motion is such as even more time and supportive caregiving that's needed. There may be a sense of feeling trapped. And that's the sandwich thing that we talked about, the sandwich generation, trapped between work, your own kids, and caregiving for aging parents. Grief is a very huge part of this. They haven't even gone, they have not passed. But for the parents they once knew is especially painful, the loss of what once was. Now, we do suggest that in this phase, it's important to establish goals, explicit goals and expectations. This just balances your ability to have that compassion and sustainability for yourself. Most definitely get professional help sooner rather than later. Focus on creating a realistic caregiving plans. It can take a small army, and it doesn't have to be just your siblings. It can be extended friends. I recall that my dad had some very dear friends that when he was going through his process of passing, he had those loved ones that were his chosen family in addition to blood family. So caregivers are often so consumed by serving that they forget to take care of themselves. This is this caregiving burnout, compassion overload, and to work to protect the caregiver's well-being, your well-being, or when you're aware that there is a sibling that is carrying most of the burden, be aware of the needs that they might have. For example, when a sibling comes to relieve you, go ahead and rest. Put your head on a pillow. Bottom line, let go of the idea that you have to do this all alone, right?
It was tempting when my siblings would come into town. I wanted to hang with them, and be there. But we're really intentional, Sharon. You need to go home and rest so that when we leave, you can come back and help. So I love your point that you have to stagger it so that it's sustainable.
Well,
Yeah.
think about it. When that infant comes, you've got that brand new baby, and they always tell you when the baby sleeps, you sleep too. It's the same principle. Now we're going to move into phase 4. This phase coincides with the physical decline. We've talked a lot about emotions, but your parents may be experiencing this rapid, even physical decline. Hard but sweet conversations are a tender part of this phase, can be. And they can include things like gratitude for your parent and their gratitude for you. I had those conversations and I cherish those conversations. They are more tender, they're different. And I remember my parents kind of alternating between just not being present at all to being very lucid. And I just loved those moments when my mother would spark, she would come back and I could just connect with her. And they're brief, but they were precious. Family stories or questions that you might regret not asking after they're gone. Write them down when you think of them and then bring them with you when you're with that parent. Have a conversation about legacy. Now, I want to spend just a few minutes on this. What is a legacy? Well, caring for aging parents often invites us to slow down and to listen more closely, to love in a quieter, more intentional way. So as the roles shift, we are now given the opportunity not only to offer support, but to receive the gift of their stories, their wisdom, their unfinished reflections. A conversation about legacy isn't just about possessions. And that's what we might think. No, or plans even. It's about meaning. It's about asking things like, what do you most want to be remembered for? I asked my dad that. And his answer was rich. What values shaped your life? What do you hope lives on in us when you pass? And I will say that my dad's dream was that each of us, his children, would find a way to be close and closer. And that dream, when he expressed that, comes alive inside of my heart and in my hope that we can generate even closer relationships. These conversations can deepen connection, bring healing before they even pass, and reminds us that love expressed and received is the truest inheritance. It's the most precious inheritance. Talk about blessings and the love that you have for them, the blessing they are for you. And if possible, repair any lingering hurts and offer forgiveness for whatever mistakes and hurts are still aching from the past, because guaranteed, if you can't offer it and you want to, but you haven't brought yourself to that point, you will regret it once they pass. Now, in this phase, some of the richest experiences can happen as we prioritize or reprioritize what is most important. This phase, as I said earlier, can bring healing. It brings you closure. You know, the accountability and remorse that can come from if you've made errors and haven't owned them. And then moments of deep connection.
Oh, I love all that, Debbie. I really love the way you talked about legacy. That hit me so hard. And yeah, asking our parents, what do you hope we carry on for you? I love that question. So thank you for sharing that with your experiences with your dad, especially. So we want to talk now about this final phase. We'll call it phase 5, when slowly but certainly we start to anticipate their passing. And this can happen quickly, as we know, or it can happen slowly, but we sense it's coming. And so in this phase, there's some of the emotions we may experience are an anticipatory grief, right? And that's hard grief. You're anticipating it. It's not there yet, but you see it coming. And that's a strong emotion. There's a hypervigilance. Sometimes you're very sensitive to everything that's happening and wondering about the timing of things. And that can create its own emotional exhaustion. We can start to experience really great fears of loss as we see this coming, that we really are going to lose our parents and those people that have often been some of the most stable people in our lives. There is that fear of loss. On the other side, for parents, they're experiencing difficult emotions too. They're feeling often more guilt over the burdens that they're placing on others. I know my parents felt so very aware of the burdens that they were placing on us, and that was hard for them. You know, they didn't want to do that. There's a loss of their independence and even their dignity in greater ways. And so this is hard. The emotions that they're experiencing, you know, on their side. There are deep questions about life and life after life and what happens when we die. My aunt just passed away, and I had beautiful, rich conversations with her about that and her thoughts as it got closer. And I can tell from her and my parents that that's often on their minds, as we get close to death. And so, again, so many emotions in this phase as both sides are navigating things.
Yeah, and these are things that most people would not think about. And that's why we pulled all these principles together and organized them in phases so that you can just even implement some of these things. But this phase, what are the goals? Let's talk about what the goals for this phase are. It's really to focus on presence over problem solving. Now, that's key in our work with couples when we help them learn how to be more present with each other. And so the same principle applies here, not fixing things, not problem solving, but just being present. This is the time to do your best to create comfort, help your parents find that dignity to say anything that needs to be said. Work to be physically and emotionally present. Now, Sherilyn, I recall you told me that your dad just wanted you to be with him during this period of time with your undivided attention, not make his bed. Now, that's such a sweet memory and a sweet request. Sherilyn, just be with me. I can imagine him saying that. This really is an opportunity to allow for moments of peace that are so meaningful. Now, hospice, to some, initially, it might be a bad word. It's something you want to avoid talking about. It is such a great resource and a blessing. Yes, it's a scary word to say, maybe so uncomfortable that you don't want to talk about it or consider it a reality, but it doesn't always mean end of life. You can go on and off of hospice as needed. The professionals that are there, that are trained to know about this process, can help clarify questions for you. It can be such a blessing to be with your parent in the days before they pass. It's a gift to help them pass in the most comfortable and tender and secure way. So there is a term that I wanted to give a little understanding of what this means. Terminal restlessness is a phenomenon that happens to most of these people that are passing. It's a state of physical and emotional agitation that occurs because the physiological changes cause this to happen, and it's in the final days or hours of life. It's common in the end of life care and can be so distressing for loved ones to see it and not understand what this is. But hospice or medical teams can help reduce the discomfort of this phenomenon. They might adjust medications or help to manage pain. They can create a calm environment and help you understand how to do that. They offer gentle reassurance and their presence and their confidence in this process so that you can feel that too. The goal really is comfort, not alertness for your parent during this stage. It's bringing them to the best comfort possible.
I'm so glad you talked about that term, terminal restlessness. I wish I had understood that before we encountered that. It can be upsetting, and it's just so helpful to understand better the dying process. And like you said, hospice is invaluable. They make it so much easier to do. Debbie, I wanted to mention one thing, how wonderful assisted living care centers are. When we first said that word, I was so afraid to say it, and my parents were afraid to say it. I envisioned in my mind kind of a rest home with them just sitting in a bed somewhere alone. And I really had no idea what a incredible places assisted living centers are. There is so much support there. There's social activities, they're just, my parents had an entirely new season in their assisted living center and blossomed there and contributed there. My dad served in the branch presidency of our faith community and used the many skills he'd had over his life. I just don't want to leave this podcast without saying there are so many great situations for our parents when they can't stay at home.
And it
Go ahead.
becomes extended family. I've witnessed this. In fact, we have a dear friend who's 99 and in assisted living. And when we visit, sometimes we'll be able to take him away for lunch or something. But he has a family now there, friends, dear friends that they can eat with in the cafeteria. They go to church together, they serve together. It's organized such that their emotional well-being is increased. So when you talk about assisted living, it's not you giving up on them, it's you actually investing in their well-being.
Yeah, well, and those people are heroes to me, and you're right, they become like family. And if, my parents went together, so it was wonderful because then the assisted living center knew them as a couple. And then when my dad passed away, my mom had an instant support there ready in place. I mean, it was so invaluable. So I can't not talk about that as we do this podcast, and with such actual reverence for the people who work in those places. They're angels to me. They
Mhm.
absolutely are. So anyway. So then we come to the final part where parents do pass. And what a blessing it is when everything is in order. The grieving is different, I think, when things are in order. And we've been intentional about this process from the beginning to the end. We see the benefits of that. And of course, it's normal to feel intense loss and grief and even sometimes guilt because caregiving is unsustainable in many ways. So there are a lot of emotions. But when we have been intentional about this process, those are minimized, and the richness, the sweetness of this experience where our parents pass into the next step and the next phase in life can be so beautiful. It's a time though when emotions are high, family tensions can be high over decisions, and if many of these can be made beforehand, that helps. But there's a lot of things to figure out with funerals and things like that at a time when honestly we're exhausted. It reminds me a little bit of a wedding, right?
Yes.
We have a wedding, everybody's exhausted, but yeah, just to give yourself and your family a lot of grace when this happens, because it is an emotionally tense time and people are exhausted from the caregiving. And then to be there for the parent who may be left behind, because this is the biggest grief and the biggest change for them, right?
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to suggest through research, we love being a research-based podcast. They identify the three biggest mistakes families make in this process. And the first one is waiting too long to have important conversations. We understand it can be really terrifying sometimes to bring hard things up, but that's one of the things that becomes a regret, is not having these important conversations soon enough. As we've talked about, allowing one person to carry everything. They call it the silent caregiver collapse. Be careful that not one person is doing everything. And then I love this one, to not stay stuck in old family roles instead of creating the connection that can be happening now. As we've talked about, old wounds can still precious time. And so the biggest regret, most regret, is about the missed connections in life. And so we hope that these suggestions will circumvent these mistakes being made that research tells us is some of the key regrets for people and families. So it isn't a season just about loss. It's about probably the deepest and richest connection and healing and love that one can find as we approach end of life with our parents. And I would say it's a priceless gift to care for parents who cared for me for most of my life. It was truly a gift to do that for them, to say thank you for everything you've done for me,
Yeah.
and their anxiety and their fears to be the one to calm them the way they called me as a little girl is, yeah, pretty sweet.
It's beautiful.
We're here to Are Therefore What, Debbie? I think my therefore what is I have a lot of friends that are doing this right now, and I hope that I can be a support to them. I've had some call me recently and just say, wow, we're in the middle of this. And so maybe to be more aware of those around me in this sandwich generation who are carrying things on both ends, and to be a source of support, a place of comfort, and do what I can to lift from the outside those who are in the process right now.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, it is hard. We are in that stage of life where even our dear friends may be passing. And
Yes.
it's alarming when we see that. But it prepares us. Now, that's my therefore what, actually. I like to look at this with a perspective of ongoing connection. I remember at my father's funeral, I felt his presence there. I felt closer to him the 2 weeks following his funeral. And it was so comforting to me to even feel closer to him. And throughout, the decade that he's been gone, I will ponder and think, what would dad say right now? Or even just feel he's there. My mom, I think about her physical disabilities. She was in a wheelchair, many years toward the end of her life. And I imagine her running to my father when she passed away. And I imagine that relationship that continues. So, my therefore what is, you are investing in their passing, but you're also investing in an even deeper relationship once they have gone. So, yeah.
Thank you, Debbie. That's so wonderful to think about, this ongoing connection that you've described. It goes on, doesn't it? It doesn't just stop. And
It does. And that's the closure we're looking for, the closure of this phase in moving into another one. So I just want to say thank you so much for listening. We hope that this has been helpful to you and that you will continue to listen to our podcast. We love the suggestions that you're sending us for topics. Please keep them coming.
Thanks so much, everyone. We love being here with you.